welcome to Politics Today. I'm Farokh Patafi. Once again we are going to talk about Pakistan's politics because it is important and especially because it keeps on revolving around the idea of accountability and corruption. We have seen various corruption cases that were filed in the past, and then we saw something which was unprecedented. Mian Nawaz Sharif, the former Prime Minister who was a convict, was allowed to go abroad. And then, of course, there were statements after statements that keep on bouncing around on why did he go abroad and how did he go abroad. But it seems that the same kind of empathy hasn't stopped there yet. Maryam Nawaz has approached the honorable courts to allow her to actually go abroad to take care of her father. The news also is coming from London that Mian Nawaz Sharif might be sent to the US for further treatment because UK perhaps has not been able to diagnose how exactly his health is. This is one aspect. Then we keep on hearing Bilawal Bhutto Zardari and his statements also. Today, he's pointedly made this point that there's no comparison between the case of Mian Nawaz Sharif, who is a convict, and his father, who is incarcerated also and is facing a trial. This is one aspect which is very important. We are going to talk about these issues because Election Commission of Pakistan, because its head actually retired recently, has become totally dysfunctional. Same seems to be about lawmaking. Because of this polarization in the environment, it seems that the parliament is not moving ahead with its legislative business. We are going to talk about all these matters, but before that, let me also welcome the Sri Lankan team that has arrived in Pakistan. And 10 years ago, when the unfortunate incident took place in Lahore, at that time we thought that perhaps this day will not come. But now they are here, and now they are going to play here as well. And not only that, we are hoping that in coming days we are going to see more players coming from all over the world to play in Pakistan. That is also a tribute to the peace builders in this country who have been fighting terrorism for quite some time and have brought this joyous occasion. Of course, when the team arrived in Rawalpindi, there was a bit of disturbance in traffic, and that was to be expected because we had to take care of security. But the great thing is that sacrifices are momentary, but achievements like this one, resumption of cricket in Pakistan, is momentous. So let us hope in coming days we see more cricket in the country. In order to help us understand today's issues that I just mentioned at the very start, we are joined by Javed Jadoon Saab, a senior journalist, senior analyst. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program. And after a long time, Shandana Gulzar Khan Sahiba, MNA, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf, and also chairperson, Commonwealth Women Parliamentarians, has joined us. Thank you very much, ma'am, for being part of the program. Next to her is Dr. Zubair Khoury, a regular on this show, needs no introduction. A senior analyst. Thank you very much, sir, for being part of the program.
Thank you for doubling it
up. Before I come to you, Shandana Sahiba, I have to ask Javed Jadoon Saab, how do you place these developments? Do you think that there is some kind of deal or some kind of agreement within the system that is happening the way media keeps on speculating? Or there's something else at all?
Thank you very much, Farokh. Farokh, the modern state system evolved around the concept of justice, equality.
Okay.
And every citizen of the state.
I thought you were going to talk about reconciliation and consensus.
I will come to that. And state is responsible in the modern state system providing protection to the citizens inside and out from internal enemies and external enemies. Now coming to your particular point, it is kind of a mockery of justice in Pakistan that a convict is released with the consent of the government, and is allowed to go abroad, while the rest of the convicts are left to rot in our horrible jail systems.
Right.
And secondly,
Before his departure, do you remember that he used to make an argument that this confrontational politics is not going to take us anywhere? And this might be an end to that confrontational politics?
for a confrontation on the platform of the National Assembly of Pakistan and Senate, of course, it is understandable when every political party is represented in the parliament, and I think that is the right platform where you discuss and debate issues. And that is the particular platform where you don't need confrontation for the sake of the people of Pakistan. But when it comes to treating the citizens and the people of the country,
equally,
when you allow somebody and you don't allow someone else, now comes the issue you pointed out. Mariam Nawaz Sahaba has filed a petition to be allowed to go outside the country.
But that is sub judice, so I don't want to actually
No, I'm not talking
speculate about that. I just wanted to use it as a
I'm not
context
talking
builder.
about the petition itself. I'm talking about the principle itself, the principle of equality and the
She's not a
principle of
convict.
treating every citizen.
No, but she's not a convict, right?
She's not a convict.
Her father was a convict. But
She's not a convict.
Yeah.
But I think you talked about the perception or the notion of a deal between Pakistan Muslim League and the government. Of course, there is no other party to be there to conclude a deal for obvious reasons.
Okay.
If any deal has been concluded, I think that it has been concluded with the government of the day, and that is the PTI government, which is in power. And once you allow somebody, and then you start,
then PTI does a
then you
great
start
job of concealing it if
then
there's
you
a
start,
deal.
Then you start retracting from your original posture that
Are
it
they-
should be allowed.
Are they?
It was the Prime Minister who talked about the genuine case of the former Prime Minister on medical grounds. It should be allowed. He spoke it on the
Right.
platform of the.
I actually don't want to litigate the past cases which are actually, they have taken place. But one aspect that is important to remind you, and then I have to go to Shandana Sahiba, Gulzar Khan Sahiba as well, is that when we were talking about parliamentarians being conciliatory, at that time you have to remember the same people are in the parliament as well that are being probed for corruption. So you cannot create two separate universities. Let me bring in Shandana Khan Sahiba and ask her regarding, first of all, ECP. What are you doing to actually ensure that Election Commission of Pakistan actually keeps functioning? At this time, it is dysfunctional.
Thank you, Badafi Saab. I can tell you the latest, which is a discussion that took place on the floor of the Assembly today, on the floor of the House. The Honourable Member from the Opposition, Khwaja Asif, declared that the government should not expect any cooperation in the upcoming days on the matter of the Election Commission. Now, it's interesting that there was a headline in the paper today in which our government had taken responsibility and stated that this matter ought to be resolved by Wednesday. As you're well aware, and perhaps your audience would be as well, that there's a problem, there's a lacuna in the Constitution. It does not address the problem of a deadlock, wherein both the Treasury benches and the opposition cannot agree to names. Now, if we're going to politicize this issue, naturally it's going to go to the courts, and it take a court, because you can't leave a matter hanging in the air like that. What's sad is that on the floor of the House, a member of Parliament would threaten the entire country with something this serious. Clearly, elections are not around the corner. It's a couple of years, and that's fine.
There are other things which are around the corner,
Fair
and
enough.
I'm going to talk about them.
Fair enough.
Let me, before that, just point to you that the role of the courts as well, because it seems that Islamabad High Court had given a deadline, and the opposition then went to Supreme Court.
Yes.
And your side actually didn't defend the case very well. The Treasury benches couldn't. Why?
Because there was a breach of honor. The idea was we would discuss.
Okay.
Now, as I said, if you're going to politicize each issue, every person in this country has a right to take anything to court, which is grey on the books, on any law book, and that's fine. But when you're going to play games, unfortunately, this is what will happen. So I wouldn't be surprised if this matter eventually lands up in the court.
Okay.
And that's where parliamentarians are cutting off their own hands and feet. And that's a pity. Because if you have an executive, you have a judiciary, you have a legislature, each one is supposed to stay within his own little circle or ambit of influence and do their job. But if things will become politicized, and unfortunately part of democracy is you don't stop people
Right.
I wish there was some way, but you don't and you can't, and that's the beauty for democracy.
Right, but the idea was that then Attorney General or District Attorney General goes to the court and then fights the government side of case, right? And there you actually, if you present your case well, you actually get the kind of relief you want.
And what
didn't
is that
happen.
relief? And what is that relief? What do you think that relief is? We want a list, a coherent list of members of the Election Commission of Pakistan. We want a chief election commissioner. We want it done by consensus. A court case will never give you consensus. It gives you a fait accompli.
And what will you say to the people who think that because your party is being probed by the Election Commission and the opposition is being probed as well, there is a kind of consensus that they are going to keep it dysfunctional for another 6 months or
That would be a pity, because I think our case is fairly strong and it needs to be fought out at the ECP. Let it be heard and let it be. You see, you can't keep cases pending in courts forever. That's the beauty of Pakistan's failed legal system, that you could keep a criminal case in court for 10 years, and that's why this country has failed. So I would suggest, whether it's our hearing on the funny funds, as they say, or their funny funds, which they've yet to declare, let it come to pass. Let it see the light of
shouldn't
day.
be any funny delay in the.
I can assure you the delay will not be from our side, not from the government side.
That is awesome. One last thing, and then I have to go to Zubair Khawari Sahab. That is about the question that was raised by Javed Jatoon Sahab. Are you cutting a deal with the opposition?
To be honest, I'm entirely in agreement with Javed Sahib. I was incensed as well when I heard of the decision. It was not a decision taken by the government, it was a decision taken by the courts.
No, but the court said that it was government.
Taken by the government.
So it's a ping pong, right?
Nobody less than the Chief Justice of Pakistan.
But I'm not going to challenge the court.
No, nobody's going to challenge the court at all, but there's a judicial decision given, and then there are hearsay remarks, obiter dicta, which are given in the media.
Okay.
Frankly, if the Lahore...
Leave that aside.
Yes.
We are seeing a lot of moving parts coming together now. Mariam Nawaz might leave the country, and Asif Ali Zardari has also petitioned that he might be given relief. Is your party to any kind of agreement or deal where the opposition leaders might leave the country, or the people who are being probed, and then everything is hunky-dory?
So, the Prime Minister of Pakistan, Imran Khan, if you recall, on the day he took oath, he said there's going to be no deal, no deal. I don't even know how to translate that in English. But let's put it this way. I also want to agree a little bit with Javed Sahib, what he said earlier about two Pakistans and the lack of, how do you say, everybody's flocking. And you didn't ask this question, but I need to touch on this, that everybody seems to be flying to London, having meetings in London. This is a poor country, yet they have the money for business class tickets to have restaurant dinners. And you know, in London, it's interesting, isn't it? Oh, yes, they are.
Okay, since we are talking about one Pakistan, not two Pakistans, let me bring in Dr. Zubair Khawari. Dr. Saab, your take on the entire deal or deal issue.
Well, it's pretty ironic, and you know my views on this.
Let me translate the word deal also, some kind of leeway.
Yeah, some kind of leeway. So you know my opinion on that. Things are happening in this country, and everybody knows that. No need for explanation. I don't want to be held by the code, and neither by the government through any sources. A person who was a convict, who was given a leeway both by the government and the courts in certain way. Let's accept it. Let's also accept this, that this government has come in with a high agenda of reforms, of changing the lives of the people. Accountability was one of the reasons that they are in here. But unfortunately, this chest thumping is going on, this loud mouthing is going on.
Okay, you don't agree to that?
No, absolutely not. I want to see more things happening in the field of economy, in the field of institutional development, in the field of reforms, in the field of local government,
and
in the field of
that
export.
is not happening?
Not to my expectations.
Okay, why not?
It's not enviable at this moment. They may pick up the pace at later point in time.
Because of lack of lawmaking or something else?
There's so many areas that are there. So my opinion is, if he has or they have gone out, let the sleeping dogs lie. This is a kind of an opportunity for this government. So please focus on those areas more.
Are you suggesting that reforms and accountability are competing values?
No, they're not competing values, but they are taking more of their energy and time and resources. Whenever you look at the Prime Minister or the different ministers talking on television and everybody at their places, they are more focused on this area. I want to be more focused on economy.
No, but you have to
Their energy
qualify.
is there.
You have to qualify at this point. How does making a statement affect
is.
reconciliation?
It is.
Because when it comes to opposition, their demands or their expectations or their relief is certain. That issue is in courts, not with the government.
No, let's just listen to my point. If a prime minister of a country talks 10 minutes on a subject which does not relate to accountability, and he talks 8 out of 10 minutes on accountability, it does mean something for me.
Right.
It is a policy
No,
statement.
but do you
A
think,
minister of my country.
do you think that the
who is-
opposition? Hang on. Do you think that the opposition leaders don't have thick skin? They cannot take it.
They have.
So why would you
They
suggest?
have the thick skin.
Okay.
But this is not their responsibility to deliver to the people of
You
Pakistan.
realize you just objected to freedom of speech.
No, let them speak. My point is, let them speak, whatever they want to speak. My point is,
No,
I
I'm
want
talking
to be
about the
more
government.
focused. I want to be more focused on the reforms agenda, on institutions agenda, on the governance agenda, on economy agenda. Let them go out. If they have gone out, that's kind of a blessing in disguise for them.
Right.
That we have flabbergasted. I have been looking at these TV screens and looking at all these accountability mantra for the last 2, 3, 4, 5 years. Please come out of it. Look at the price hike. Look at the problems of the people that they are facing. Focus more on that issue.
Let me go back to Javed Jadoon Sahab. Do you agree with this idea, sir? That somehow the government should actually compromise on this principle, find a middle road, and actually try to deliver more for the people of Pakistan?
No, I'm not
rather
saying
than-
that. I'm not saying this. Government should not be taking this middle road. I'm saying that if something has happened, there's no use of crying over the spilled milk, of talking again and again and again.
You
Something
say
has
it
happened.
as if it is some kind of a natural occurring.
No, it's
An
not a natural
earthquake took
occurring.
place, and now you cannot
it's-
stop it.
No, it happened because somebody allowed it.
Okay.
It did not happen out of the sky.
Okay, Javed Jadoon Sahab.
Farah, if you look at the political landscape in Pakistan, I think the politics of confrontation has led the country on the path to economic decay. And as you pointed out earlier as well, that we have been talking about the confrontational aspect of politics and should be
Right.
done away with that. No doubt in that. But when a government comes into power with certain slogans which have a lot of appeal for the people,
Right.
for any given country.
Yeah.
In this particular case, Pakistan Tehreek-e-Insaf came into power on the basis of one major slogan of holding accountable those who looted the
No,
taxpayers'
but
money.
here's another counter argument to
for-
that. Allow me just slipping it in that this was their promise or their part of their manifesto for quite some time, but they didn't win. Now they also promised something else that Zubair Ghori Sahab is talking about, reforms as well, better days for the common man, housing schemes, right, jobs for more
Employment,
people, right? So perhaps it is time to realize that now that the people have voted for them, their mandate is broader than mere accountability.
Of course, I totally agree with that. Accountability is not the only policy which government has to pursue. But given the situation, the difficulties Pakistan faces today on domestic front and on the foreign front. We always talk about the domestic issues and the problems, but there are myriads of problems on the external front as well. Of course, I think the healthcare, education, and we have been talking about structural reforms in institutions in these talk shows. I think without introducing structural reforms in institutions, no government can succeed in its ambitious targets and ambitious agenda as
And
well.
you're not
In
satisfied.
Pakistan,
You're not satisfied when IMF says or World Bank actually
I haven't
say.
completed, Farah.
Huh?
I haven't
No,
completed.
I know, but I have to actually ask you for an explanation. That is my right. You agree to that, right? I'm asking if the IMF or World Bank actually claim that government is going through the structural reform. You agree with that?
Going through.
Yeah.
Of course it is.
So
We
that
have
means
seen-
that the government
we
is
have
delivering.
We have seen improvement as far as economy is concerned. We have seen certain indicators which are improving,
Right.
and the stabilization factor. Farooq, the problem is we expect a lot from a government which is in power for the last 18, 17 months.
Okay.
And the problems created in the last 3 or 3.5 decades, I think they're so huge, so monumental, that any government, even a brilliant government, I don't think would be able to do that in 5 years, even in 5 years tenure.
So you don't-
Expecting something in such a limited time period. I still remember when I used to work as the special correspondent of former president, he said, Pakistan is the most difficult country to govern. And the words were coming from a military dictator who had a complete authority and control over the society and the country.
Right.
And now here we are talking about a government which has a very thin majority in the parliament, maybe 3 or 4 members.
So-
And we
so
are
you
talking
don't
about a
agree with
country which
Zubair?
is mired in so many issues and expecting something in 1.5 year, 2 year, Farooq, even you and me, we know that even setting a house in order.
Right.
Even setting a house in order, if you shift a
Since
house
you
from one
objected-
locality to second locality,
So,
I think it is would be asking a little too much.
Since you objected to my crosstalk, I had to be very careful that you finish. But I have to ask you then that you don't agree with Zubair Hori Sahab, that the government is not trying to deliver on reforms.
I think I'm not saying government is not delivering. Government is delivering, but I think we need to give it time. But on many issues, but there are.
Hori Sahab, this is your answer.
30 seconds. 30 seconds.
Let me time it
Having
then.
said that, there are many areas I would like the government to perform in a much better way.
Right.
The good
This is
governance.
a fair point.
Yes.
Let me ask Shandana Han Sahiba that your government actually promised a lot of reform. It might be doing a lot as well. But everything has to be backed up by any legal or constitutional infrastructure. We haven't seen that kind of lawmaking actually. We haven't seen any lawmaking at all.
Couple of points here. If I may be allowed to backtrack just for a moment to put the discussion, I think, in a little bit more structured manner. Both my colleagues here are giving out exceptionally intelligent observations, but the problem is there has to be context for this to fit in. Now, what is that context? President Zardari's, it's attributed to him that he's supposed to have said that you can either have the accountability agenda, you can have the reform agenda in which you advance the economy.
It was basically Pervez Musharraf's finding or conclusion.
Let's say whomever, right? But it's a very interesting way of looking at things. And it's in layperson's language, it's called turning a blind eye. And we've done that for the last 72 years, I don't say 35 years.
Right.
We've always turned a blind eye when it suited us, because if we take the case of Balochistan, nothing's ever been done here. So the blame falls squarely on every shoulder that's ever governed this country, right? I don't talk about Lahore and Peshawar, which are slightly better. Let's talk about the worst hit in this country. I was at an event recently where I offended a couple of people where I said that we're a country with nuclear weapons and we can't afford to feed our people 3 times a day. That makes me ashamed. So that is your context.
Yeah.
Now,
But this is an argument that goes for India as well. It can't feed all its people, right?
no, but
It's a
India is
nuclear
1 billion, we're 220 million. And I wouldn't compare myself to them. They've become a racist state, so let's not even go there. Extreme, massive disappointment after electing this gentleman for the 2nd time. Anyways, to come to the issue now, as you said, enough legislation. So it's on record, Pakistan is one of the most overly legislated countries in the world. So legislation is not the problem. Your Pakistan Penal Code, your Criminal Code, your Procedural Codes, your CPC.
You realize how old are they?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, 100 years
Of
or
course,
more?
of course. We're a colonial legacy, right? And that's
Yeah.
what everybody has.
So
but
you
to
have to
improve them with
actually
it,
amend them.
you have the Evidence Act. All I'm saying is the following. You open up the books, you have dozens of laws that have never even been looked at, let alone implemented. Legislation is a cheap man's victory. Let's do this. Kawanin ji nikale. That doesn't work. I agree, there needs to be legislation on the right subjects. But let's go to the assembly.
I'm not saying this subject or that subject.
No,
I'm saying
I
that
agree
whenever
with you,
you are
but-
trying to do something, you have to come up with a legal framework.
Of course. Let's just take the
And you
case of the
haven't.
Chief of Army Staff, right? You've had dozens of extensions of various army chiefs, and clearly nobody ever legislated. No one even ever thought to. But that's something that came from the Supreme Court. That's a positive thing, that legislature has been not doing its job properly. So I agree with you over there. What I'm saying is legislation the solution?
No, but
Will legislation give you jobs?
legislative assembly not part of the democratic structure that we have?
Certainly,
If other
certainly.
parts are working, you just mentioned judiciary and then executive, what is happening at the legislature? This is the question, right?
I will answer that question if you give
18
me a second.
months,
Do
no
you think,
laws.
sir, the judiciary is working? We have a country where you drag a case from 3 to 10 years in the court.
Yeah,
Is that
but
working judiciary?
I have to be grateful that since this Chief Justice has come, they have tried to introduce a lot of reforms.
I agree.
Right?
And when do you introduce
And,
reforms?
and you realize that then he comes, takes to the podium and says, Government of Pakistan, you are supposed to give us laws to cover these reforms. And
I'm
there are
not
no...
disagreeing with that point with you. I think you've missed my point. What I'm saying is the following. Which country does legal reforms where your country's legal system has failed? And it's only failed for a particular strata of society. Sir, I can assure you, the laws work very well for you and I.
Failure is a dramatic word, with due respect. I
Sir,
mean,
I work in
bits
the
of-
courts. I know how they function. Unfortunately, there's no glowing report on the courts either.
Yeah, lower
There's
courts,
not a
right?
single institution in this country
Low-
that you can give a glowing report that they've done their job well. We failed. Let's accept it.
Okay.
But let's move on from that.
Yeah,
The
yeah.
problem with my friends
I'm
in the
hoping
opposition.
that you're talking about the subordinate courts, not the
No,
apex
no, no.
courts.
I'm
right.
talking about
Thank
the
you very
country in general, sir. What I'm
Okay.
saying is the following. Till we accept, remember we discussed truth and reconciliation?
Right.
What did Mandela do to put in the Truth and Reconciliation Committee? People must accept failures. And you don't doubt people's intentions. You just say we failed doing X, Y, Z. We may have had the best intentions at heart, but we still messed up.
Mandela and Truth and
And Desmond
Reconciliation
Tutu, Bishop
Commission
Desmond
were
Tutu.
great ideas.
Yes.
But have you seen what is happening in South
I was
Africa
there 2
now?
weeks ago. I've seen exactly what's happening.
Yeah.
It's a provincial issue, sir. It's not a national issue, but we can come
Yeah.
back to South Africa some other day.
A reverse apartheid is there now. Things are falling apart. Cities keep on
It's the same in
relegating
Zimbabwe,
to
it's the same in Uganda. So it's all over the world. All I'm trying to tell you is the following. In Pakistan, if you were to tell me today that legislation is the problem, in certain areas, yes. But how does legislation help you get more
No,
jobs?
but you
How
have to
does
explain to
legislation-
me
Yes.
why there must be some
There are
laws.
other solutions which I'm happy
No,
to tell you.
there are laws which must be amended, right?
So, no,
You agree
there
to
are
that?
laws that have to be put in practice. You have your anti-profiteering law. You have anti-marketeering laws. Why are they not being
The
implemented?
fact that you came up with 6 ordinances,
Yes.
right, instead of actually passing bills in the parliament, begs a question.
Certainly.
What is happening in the parliament?
Sir?
When you have been criticizing the other political parties for doing
For
the same thing.
ordinances as well.
Yes, and
So-
let me explain. In a year and a half, we've come up with 19 ordinances. A year and a half, and the previous government, 119 ordinances per year. So it's very relative, and I'll tell you why we do ordinances,
Parliament.
sir. I agree, Parliament is supreme. So when I was
Parliament
working
has to
for
function,
the
right?
previous government, if I could just complete, when I was working for the previous government, sir, we pushed through 4 ordinances in a single day. We pushed through the same as laws from February to August. We came up with 4 laws in a single day. We didn't go to a single committee.
I'm
And this is for the National Tariff Commission. I made those laws, I drafted them, and I pushed them through as I was a consultant to Commerce Ministry.
Right.
I can assure you that these tall claims of democracy and legislation will not solve your problems. Legislation is
It might
important,
not,
yes.
but this is how democracies are supposed to function,
in
especially
this part of the
parliamentary,
world, sir.
parliamentary democracy.
I agree.
Right?
But you have more
There
for Parliament.
might be this
What about
idea
oversight?
that somehow you have to give up on the
no,
parliamentary
no.
form of democracy,
No,
but
no,
still
No. You don't give up on Parliament, but what is the other function of Parliament?
account
Other
oversight.
Oversight. Where is that?
So you are building my case. You are
I
not
agree.
actually adding
That's what
solution.
I'm saying. We're not
Let me-
disagreeing. You're just not.
Zubair Wari Sahib is waiting for his turn
Yeah.
for quite some
No,
time.
no, it's
Please
okay.
go ahead.
Ms. Khan, when she was saying that we did this number of ordinances and previous government did this number and the previous number did this is called whataboutism in the US.
Yeah.
What about that? What about that? I have voted for the PTI for the 2 consecutive years. Let me confess it here, if it's a confession, not an
That's a good one.
admittance. I'm not here to listen to you to say that they did that and we did that.
Okay.
The second point is
You are, in a sense, entire them. So whatever they were, you are counted
that's
to
why
that.
you are here. Because they were not delivering, that's why you are here. And if you will not deliver, somebody else will come. The second point.
Who? Khadim
Why? Whosoever. Whosoever.
Right.
The second point is why we are talking in binaries, mutually exclusive things. The government is just like an octopus. Come on, you have a huge machinery. You are not only the executive, but also leading the parliament
bench.
also,
Yeah,
the
treasury
treasury bench also. So if you are saying we are not getting into the legislation, we are working on the executive side, you have to do both.
Yeah.
You
What
have to
is
take
wrong with the
everybody
parliament
along.
right now? Hang on. What is wrong with the parliament, by the way, right now? Why do you think it hasn't been able to function?
Well, the parliament, they don't have the majority in the Senate.
Right.
Let's accept it.
Right.
If they want to pass the bills, and they also know that in the heart of the heart, that if I take any bill to the floor, I might get it in there. Of course, they will get it because they have the majority in the National Assembly of Pakistan. They will get it. And then in the Senate, they might face a defeat there.
Yeah, but In order
Hang
to
on.
conclude that,
Yes.
you have to first
You
pass a
have to-
bill through the lower house.
Yes. No.
You haven't.
What there is no charm in doing that when you already know that what is going to happen in the next.
No.
But I will
absolutely.
explain in
Yeah,
our turn.
but chairman, when it comes to chairman Senate selection, magic can happen.
No. Let me
Not
go.
in lawmaking.
No. Let me go to another level. What about the provincial assemblies?
Okay.
They don't have any Senate.
All right.
They have the majority. Why we are not legislating on that? Why there is no local government there in KP and in Punjab?
Yeah, they
Why
have
there are
bills.
why there are no police reforms there, which the Prime Minister have been agreeing and advocating for such a long time?
Yeah.
Just let me remind them that you have 100 hands and perhaps 2,000 feet.
Yeah.
You have been working in, you have to work in each and every area day in, day out.
Yeah.
Do not talk in the binaries.
Okay.
That if
So-
we do
so-
this, we don't
so
do this.
where
We do
does
this,
the-
we don't do this.
When you look at the National Assembly, where does the blame lie?
Both.
Does it lie with the treasury benches
Both, sir,
who
both.
are not tabling the bills?
Both, sir.
We have seen they are tabling, right? Or is it only because of the opposition's resistance to the idea of Parliament moving forward, especially the opposition that keeps on presenting itself as the custodian of the
Yes.
Parliament?
It's an open secret what the opposition is looking for. They want to rescue themselves from this accountability drive.
Right.
And this is what they call give and take, low and low. If you want to have cooperation with us on this very area, you have to give us some leeway here.
Okay, that's why
Everybody
you're
knows.
saying if Nawaz Sharif goes abroad
Yeah.
or goes to America, it's okay.
Everybody knows that. If you want to have
But
our
what
support,
does it tell you about political parties where only one person or two people or 4 or 5 people, their well-being is their national agenda?
that's our brand of politics here.
Wow.
That's real politics.
Uh,
Every
let-
country
let-
have their own
Javed,
Can
brand
I
of
just
Sir,
quickly
you want-
respond, sir? Just to one point,
Yes.
just one point. I agree completely with Wari Saab. My only issue is the following. There was, if you recall, a bill passed through the National Assembly on increasing the number of judges of the High Court of Islamabad.
Yeah.
Went to the Senate, they cut it to ribbons. Why? Because they said, well, we would like judges to be enhanced for all of Pakistan. Well, we knew that. You could have put that in the bill when it went to your committee. So that partially...
Your committee?
Sorry?
You said your committee.
No, it went
No,
to
no.
the Law and Justice
The
Committee in the
relevant
National
committee.
Assembly.
There.
It was there, it was discussed. Whichever party wanted amendments, because over there it's apolitical, right? In a committee, they could have, but it was a game. They played the game in the National Assembly, got the bill passed, went to the Senate. One of the reasons, and let me tell you one thing. So 2 or 3 days ago, we had on the 3rd of December, International Day of Disability. Do you know where the disability bill is lying? Do you know where the Zainab Alert bill is lying? Our children are getting raped and killed. Where are all those bills?
Right.
With the chairman of the Human Rights Committee, what is he doing sitting on them? The committee's passed them.
Okay.
They're playing games.
Right.
So all I'm saying is legislation will help you, provided somebody is willing to implement it.
But you have to realize in Pakistani politics, there's an argument that is made. And 2 parties are attributed with certain attributes. A People's Party can get away with whatever it wants to pass in the parliament. This is thought that they are magicians in that realm. In the executive side, it is thought that PMLN are the doers, not the thinkers, right? Your party said that you are going to be actually better than both. And that's why you are in power. And when we hear these arguments, people say that you have to have a magic wand. You have to find a way to resolve those issues. Standing committees were not created by me, by the Speaker of the House. So why is he not reconstituting it?
Reconstituting what?
The committee, if it is not
The
working.
bills have been passed by the committee. They've gone to the chairperson, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto. Let's ask him where are those bills. They've disappeared.
How do they go to
So
chairman of
once
a
they're
party?
vetted, there's a process, right? It goes through one committee, then it goes to the law ministry, then it goes to cabinet, then it comes back to the chairman, and then it has to be presented to the Senate.
Okay,
They've made it
standing
through the
committee
assembly.
chairman, okay.
Yes,
Yes.
that's what I'm saying. So
I thought that party chairman.
no. Standing committee. All I'm saying is the following: games are being played at the expense of the nation. That's all I was trying to say.
And somehow I feel a tinge of defeatism. That lawmaking is not,
just
that needed.
frustration that they would go to that level to ensure that this entire Save My Father campaign has taken an ugly turn now.
Okay, if I'm a person in uniform right now, and I'm hoping that in the next 6 months, Javed Jadoon Sahab, the bill on extension of army chief will be passed. I must be having a depression listening to whatever we are saying. That means nothing will happen there as well.
I think this is what the impression we get. Dr. Ghori was saying that it's realpolitik what is happening, but unfortunately, I think realpolitik is a Bismarckian philosophy and approach. The person who unified the Germany, who was a leader, I think this is not realpolitik. We are talking about the politics of hypocrisy. When we
Oh,
talk about
that
talk
is
about
realpolitik.
that
But
is
That's
not
what
real.
it is.
That is not realpolitik. Realpolitik is based on the ground situation and considerations. What is the ground situation right now? The people are asking for the relief from the government.
Okay.
And government is
Financial
unable. Government is unable to provide relief to the people of Pakistan. Why? The most effective platform of the parliament. Somebody said that it's not the National Assembly. I think let us correct ourselves. National Assembly is the platform where you legislate.
Yeah.
And I think it is the responsibility of the government to take the initiative to legislate. And
Right.
then you go to the opposition asking their cooperation.
Yeah.
And once you go for a legislation which is people-friendly legislation, and the opposition does not cooperate with you,
Right.
I think the people of Pakistan are watching. Saying that opposition might not be cooperating with the government, and just on those bases you don't go for the legislation,
Right.
I think that is not the excuse to be
It is
accepted by
not
the
going to
people.
cut.
No,
Yeah.
no,
Cut
the
it.
legislation is there. We're bringing in ordinances. In the meantime, well, they will not allow us to look. You can't stop the country because the opposition is upset. The country has to move on.
Okay.
That's
And
all
for
I'm
the
saying.
second
Yeah,
point,
but ordinances were a concern
Second
that
point-
even Pervez Musharraf promised that he is going to do away with. And they are going to actually come up
Sir,
with
Pervez
lawmaking.
Musharraf
Sir,
is
please.
not the
Second
same as
point.
President
Sec-
Arif Alvi. Big difference.
No, but he is part of Pakistan.
second
history,
point
right?
was the implementation. She said that it is the implementation which is not there, and legislation, she said, over-legislated country in the Pakistan is right now.
Yeah.
But we do
Tell it-
not
tell it
have
to
the
the
we do not have
office.
the legislation. Who has
it-
who has to implement the legislation? Government.
But tell
you,
it to the
you legislate a law, and then it comes to the government of Pakistan, whichever government is in power, the ruling alliance coalition
Right.
or a single majority party. If you can't do that, if you don't do that, then the people have a right to ask you.
Right.
And when you go to the people after 5 years, I think sloganeering is not going to work.
Okay.
Concrete delivery of services is going to satisfy the people of Pakistan.
Right.
And if people, I think in the whole situation, the biggest stakeholders, the people of Pakistan, are being neglected by every political party,
Right.
including the ruling alliance.
Yeah, but my concern is that when you cannot come up with legal reforms, right? Especially when it comes to police reform and other things, then the executive has to go for what is called shortcuts or jugaad, some kind of techniques to actually work around the law, which was bad, right? And if Pakistan is over-legislated country, please tell it to the court that was hearing the case of Army Chief's extension, because at that time we found out that there
There was
was
a
no
gap.
law even to define his existing term in office.
Yes.
That was a
Right?
blind spot.
Even after the
Humongous.
even after the passage of couple of weeks, 6 months is a very, very small time period to legislate as far as one of the most important issues this country faces, to the appointment of the Chief of Army Staff.
Yeah.
No party has shown the kind of interest which is right now, I think, desirable. They have formed a committee. They haven't approached the political parties. They have not decided whether it is going to be act of parliament or there's going to be the amendment in the constitution. I
Let
think
us ask-
you need to educate the people of Pakistan, first of all, whether it is going to be act of parliament or it is going to be the amendment in the constitution.
Okay.
Because there are two differing opinions being expressed by the legal community and the political, by the politicians
These are
as
very
well.
legitimate questions. Shanana Khan Sahaba, your answer to both these questions.
So the second one first,
yeah.
because that's easier to remember. Look, there's also a third option which we're talking about or not talking about, and that is amending the current Army Act.
Okay.
Because you don't always have to legislate. You can always amend what exists already. The more important question is, will the opposition agree or not? What are the parameters? Will this apply to each army chief, or will this apply to all the other chiefs of forces? And what about, for instance, you appoint an army chief and he passes away, he or she, it could be a she someday, hopefully, and that person passes away 12 months or 14 months into their term.
Right.
Does the next one get then appointed for about 18 months or another 3 years? All these questions, rightfully pointed out by the Honorable Supreme Court, have not been thought out.
Right.
And that's where, whether it's previous parliamentarians or us, we don't pass the buck to them. We say,
Right.
yes, it is an oversight on part of Parliament, but it will be rectified. And it happens every day, even today in the United States. You have a president who's facing a potential impeachment. And the question is on the question of law.
Okay.
Can or can he not be impeached according to the present constitution?
Right.
So, one thing. Secondly, there are so many things I would love to say, but unfortunately I cannot say.
You cannot. You are filtering yourself.
You know, we don't live in a free world, do we?
We do.
No, we live in a democratic world. Big difference. Democracy is not the same as absolute freedom.
Okay.
But when it comes to the people, I agree that we are answerable to the people, in front of the people, and the Chief of Army Staff is one of those legislations which is important for the nation to understand. It sends a signal to the outside world that we're a country that can manage our legislative business, but there are other businesses. For instance, you have dozens of laws on the books for which rules have never been made, and those laws are never made operational, right?
Yeah.
If we're talking about the same issue. But to come back to the opposition and the treasury benches, look, if it's going to be blackmail, I'm afraid it's never going to pass. And you're going to continue to see this impasse, because if once you give in, once you accept that your corruption in exchange for my reform, this country is never going forward.
Right.
Because then the question comes in.
But here's an example. Pervez Musharraf takes over the country. He's all powerful. He can hold anybody accountable. And then after accountability drive for 6 months, 1 year, 1.5 years, somebody comes and tells him that if you are going to actually pursue this path, forget about growth, forget about reforms, forget about fixing things. And then he kind of actually makes peace with the first in order to ensure the second. And during his time, economy was really working better than many other examples.
Agreed.
I'm afraid I'm going to have to disagree a little bit there, because I'm not an economist, I'm a trade lawyer, and we know how trade works, right?
Yeah.
There are gimmicks, there are ways. Number one, you cannot compare the government of Prime Minister Imran Khan to President Pervez Musharraf, whose
Why
term
not?
was...
We are talking
There are two
about
governments. We are
presidents
talking
and
about the two
governments,
governments.
No, that's
It
apples and
doesn't make
oranges.
any difference.
That's of course it does. Sir, we were just
When you're
talking about
sitting there,
democracy.
you are the executive.
No, sitting there, good
Absolutely.
one. No. You're occupying a seat and you've been elected to a seat. Big difference.
But still in
Number
power.
one. Power, yes. Power, yes.
He
Power-
was elected, by the way, as well.
At some point in time, yes. I am aware of that.
And we are
referendum.
talking about this situation after that, right?
Okay. Economic growth happened and you had the biggest blackouts in the country starting from his time.
No,
Your,
end of his
your exports, because your exports started growing. There was absolutely no, if you check, there was no extra capacity in the country. So if the industry is consuming all electricity, what are the consumers doing? Why did the blackouts happen after his time and not before that?
Right.
Because they didn't plan. I don't even know if you recall, in that time in Pakistan, there was a scarcity of corn because they were exporting ethanol in billions of dollars. So that's good, but I'm afraid I cannot give him credit where it's not due. And you cannot compare the two
Yeah,
governments.
but I'm not
And
talking
let
about
me
Pervez
and let me
Musharraf.
talk about
I'm
the legacy.
talking about this
The
assumption.
legacy, that it was a wrong lesson to leave. You don't trade away accountability for reform. They are two different subjects.
Right.
And the message you give to people is that the rich who can afford to escape accountability, they will travel abroad, but the poor ones stay here in jails because your accountability is more important. And that is ridiculous.
Zubair Hari Sahib, I'm told that we are left with 3-4 minutes. You can respond to all that was said, and I will take that comment as a conclusion from you.
I'm just not responding. I'm just adding to this thing that the problems that they are facing, there's a serious capacity problem in Pakistan. Even if you were talking about the legislature, what's going on, what's the problem in the legislature, I think there's a capacity issue.
Capacity of imagination also?
No, capacity in every respect in legislation. Right. You need to develop their capacity in many ways because they were not trained to legislate like in other countries. Right. You have to work with them a lot. That is one issue. And secondly, as far as the reforms and governance is concerned, there is again this kind of a problem that we have been facing. I've been in civil service, so I can see that what are the problems they might be facing. People are saying that they are getting the same team because perhaps they are the better ones among the lot.
Yeah.
Perhaps they are the one who have been working. The others are just waiting for Godot and Godot never comes. Right. So this is the one biggest issue that they have been facing. I think they should start focusing on the capacity things and the governance reforms. Yeah. I think this is the linchpin of this whole problem.
Okay. Someday I have to ask you, let us do a program about lack of imagination in the overall things as well, because there are many things.
Lack of creativity.
No, imagination. Imagination is mother of everything, right? We seem to be lacking in so many aspects when it comes to imagination. I will ask that in another program. Right now I'm told that we have to start concluding one-liners. Your conclusion.
I think the only thing with the government is lacking is it is not staying the course. Okay. You say something and then I think you get lost in so many other issues.
Concentration problem.
The issue with the cabinet is you decide something and then you don't see the implementation stage.
Right.
It doesn't come.
Right, and the government has to correct that. Let me ask Shandana Khan Sahib, your conclusion.
No, I think we inherited a rather difficult situation.
Everyone does. in Pakistan? Yeah.
Again,
Please go ahead.
we've inherited a very difficult situation. Certain reforms have started. We're the only one who actually put ourselves to account, ourselves to task, and this is where we'll do reform. Reform may well be slow, but it will be seen. And if it is not seen, I can assure you will not win the next election. So leave it to the people. Let them decide.
Yeah, I wanted to ask if things are that bad with the parliament, perhaps you can go for new elections, but I will
Don't
ask.
do
I
that.
don't think they're that bad. I don't think so,
Okay.
but that's what the perception
that
that the
bad.
opposition
Yeah,
gives.
yeah, but we have to ask this question in one of the shows in the future, and you have to
Certainly.
promise that you will be there, right? Zubair Hori Sahab, I said that I will take your past comment as a conclusion, but you can add one sentence.
No, that's not. I have nothing against this comment or any other for that matter. I just want that the government should be working in each of the areas that they have promised, not focusing on one single agenda.
Right. On that note, I have to conclude the program. I have to thank you, Zubair Hori Sahab, Chandana Gulzar Khan Sahiba, and Javed Jadoon Sahab. Thank you very much, all of you, for your kind participation. Viewers, you have listened to the participants. When it comes to the future, there are pessimists, there are pragmatists, and there are optimists. I actually belong to the tribe that is more optimist. But the problem right now is that while other branches might be moving ahead, Parliament is one aspect that keeps on worrying all the optimists in the country. Let us hope in coming days that changes. This was today's program. Thank you very much for watching us. Take care.